Welcome to Human Powered, the podcast about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. I'm Trenton Moss, and today I have Tina Judic, co-founder and chairman of the independent agency network Tomorrow Group. Tina, hello.
Hey, how are you doing, Trenton?
Thank you so much for joining, Tina. So, Tina, 17 years ago, you founded the search agency Found, and since then, you've built it into a group of 5 agencies, the Tomorrow Group. So tell me, across the group, how do you define high performing?
How do you define high performing? Okay, I would sum it up in one word as impact. We've got such an absolute breadth of brilliant talent across Tomorrow. We've got a huge variety of personalities. But one thing we always seek out in people is their ability to make an impact. People who move things forward, not just keep things running, those who question and make suggestions, they're curious, they're commercially aware, they take ownership. So I think it's really important to understand what we mean by impact. And what we recognize is that there's 4 key traits that sit within that. We have curiosity, we have drive, we have honesty, and we have empathy. So if I take a look through those and go, what do I mean by it? So what do I mean by curiosity? I invite people to ask questions, to challenge assumptions, not just come to the table and nod and agree. I'm asking people to bring ideas from outside the room, to join the conversations that maybe aren't directly their conversations. I'm asking people to be super curious. I need to give that platform and demonstrate a desire to listen to other people's views. So I think that's really, really important. I'm saying, I want you to be curious. I need to demonstrate that I'm very capable and wanting to listen to them probing me for questions, because ultimately, curiosity is how innovation spreads. And I guess the same kind of follows through for other elements. So if I think about asking for drive, I'm asking of you to own your work. I'm asking you to spot opportunities to go further. I'm asking you to celebrate others who are pushing boundaries or who are raising standards. And I need to call out brilliant behavior. That's really on me, and it's on leaders within the business. And whether it's a suggestion someone has made to improve something, it could be how someone shone in a client meeting. We all like to be told we've done well, right? So let's do more of it. So that's a massive thing that we really try and champion, because for all of us, it just gives us a lot more purpose and fundamentally a lot more motivation as well. In terms of honesty, I have to be open and receptive to feedback. It's all well and good saying, listen to me, I'm going to tell you things. I need people to tell me that too. I'm a really straight talker by nature. So I'm not asking for rudeness, I'm not asking for bluntness, but to give people the freedom to just really express themselves. So I ask people to speak up early, to share feedback. And as a business and across the whole Tomorrow Group, we're huge believers in if we fail quickly. Many of you will know that mantra, but it's being able to live by that mantra. Admit your mistakes fast so we can resolve things and we can move along faster. And then finally, empathy. Growth in business, and certainly in businesses like ours, which are agency-led businesses, it starts with having really deep empathy for our clients, for their business, for their whole world that they're operating in, and for the people and culture that they're trying to connect with. We need to listen first and think about our decisions and how they affect others. So leaning into the client, as I just said, but also into our partners and colleagues. Ask ourselves what pressure they're under and what success looks like for them. So that's kind of a key thing that's always sat across Tomorrow in terms of who we are, what we look for in people, and then how we seek to drive things forward. Each of the businesses has its own version of the show and tell, their own forums, they have team meetings. Across the group, we make sure everyone has got a platform to speak, whether that's in our all company Friday meetings, on stage at our business reviews, or through shout outs on Slack. And creating that visibility and space for recognition has had real impact. Core examples of that, here we go, I guess 3 people who I've worked with for a very long time are now senior leaders in their own right. Dora Moldovan, she joined as an engineer and became co-founder of Breda. She's now our Chief AI Officer. Flo Bundy, she started 10 years ago as our office manager and is now COO. And Natalie Patel, who joined as an account manager, is MD of Found. Each of those people I've worked very closely with, and each of them are the result of bringing out the best of the traits that we want to see in people and want to see displayed in our leaders.
That's amazing that you've provided off the top of your head examples of 3 people who joined the business at a relatively junior level who are now on the senior leadership team.
Absolutely. It's great. I mean, it's so exciting to be able to see. And there's so many other examples in the business where people have joined one business and moved over to another part of the business. Those who have joined in a specialist role and decided that they love engaging with clients, or they see themselves in a more sales focused role. I think the major thing is just identifying where people have strengths, and sometimes they're not in the right role, and it doesn't mean that they're a bad person in their job. It just means there might be another avenue that you can open up for them. And we've seen that happen over and over again across the business in a really positive way. I haven't always got it right, though. I think that's an important thing to probably say. And when I come back to the traits and the importance of what we're looking for, that I haven't always applied those traits. And I guess one example, I'm sure many will be able to lean into this, is the example of promoting people before they were ready. And why do we do it? We want to keep somebody happy. We want to motivate them. We think life might be easier for everyone. And, guess what? It never works. And what we've certainly learned over the years is when you do that, you're not only putting pressure on that person, you're also affecting the entire team. And it can create such an imbalance, such resentment and confusion about what good really looks like, because you've put it up there on a pedestal of what good looks like. So you need to be able to adhere to that. And I guess I learned that the hard way. I do focus on developing people in roles now and really trying to encourage not to promote too early and not to promote for the wrong reasons. But I mean, by all means, take a chance on people. That's a positive. Do take a chance, but just make sure you can back up your thinking. And I think that's what then builds real confidence and long-term success for the individuals you're working with, for the team, and then fundamentally for the business too. One great example that springs to mind, and I'm not going to name names, but it's a fabulous person who was working within our PPC team as a PPC analyst, did an okay job, wasn't really enjoying it, wasn't really thriving, and was an okay PPC analyst. What they absolutely adored was data. What they absolutely adored was mining into that data and seeing what trends they can identify to understand what problems might be presented and how we could work with that data. So what we did, we moved him away from the PPC team and into the data team. And he's now grown into quite a fundamental key role within Breda as AI evangelist, as a data scientist, and is truly phenomenal at what he does. We could have easily kept him within Found. He wouldn't have been happy. He probably would have left. And instead, we've got somebody who several years later is absolutely flying.
What a lovely story. And it's real testament to the fact that you really want to focus on the people and developing them in the path that works for them.
Absolutely. People make the world go round. If people feel engaged, if people feel happy, if people feel supported, if people feel they can learn, then they're going to work really hard. And if we're all working really hard together and learning together, we're going to do some great things together. And at the end of the day, I work for an agency group. It's hard work working within the agency land because you have a lot of demands from a lot of clients. So making everybody's life as happy as it possibly can be, as energy focused as it can be, as opportunistic as it can be, is a huge way to truly excel as a business.
And I think you're correct. Running an agency is hard. Running a group of 5 agencies is perhaps even harder. And Tina, you've talked a bit about some of the things that you do group-wide, and these are still 5 different agencies. How do you maintain that togetherness across 5 different agencies?
One of the best decisions I made was stepping away from Found, where I was essentially running both Found and our influencer marketing agency Disrupt and Creating Tomorrow. It let me step back from day to day. It let me give brilliant people the space to lead. And the moment I did that, I started to see the businesses through a completely different lens. And it was really tough at first, especially with Found. Found was my baby. And handing it over to Natalie Patel was a huge step. In all fairness, seeing her run it has been so amazing. She's brought new energy, she's brought new direction, and also changed the way I thought about what my role was. Literally overnight, I became much more open to risk, which seems insane, but it's a really good place to be because you're just standing a little bit higher above it all. And then around the same time, I spun Breda out of Found whilst also bringing in an MD for Disrupt. So we suddenly went from one business to 3 and connected under one group. The sense of togetherness, it comes from the fact that I've worked with several of the leaders of these businesses for a long time. We've grown together, we've built trust, and we've shaped our way of working. Each business has a clear identity, it knows what it stands for, but there's also a shared narrative through Tomorrow that connects everything that we do. We've got shared ways of working, especially when it comes to tech platforms, to how we apply AI, to how we approach strategy, to how we serve our clients. Each business has its own personality, but we ensure that none of them are operating in isolation. In terms of working together, we meet as a full company online every Friday afternoon. And we've got Slack channels for everything from innovation ideas to shout outs, announcements to charity raisings. It keeps the conversation alive across the group, and especially when we're not all in the office. We're not in the same office, we're not all in the same country, we're not all in the same time zone. Every quarter, we bring everyone together in person for a company-wide meeting at a cinema, and we talk a lot about the business. We have real showcases about what we're doing, what our goals are, how well we've done, and we allow individuals to really flourish on stage and talk about what they've achieved. And then in summer, we have a bigger event, which is a summer party, where the whole group really comes together. And it's just a way of everyone focusing on what they're doing, celebrating what they're doing, but also recognizing what else is happening across the group, because it can be really exciting.
How do you get the balance right to allow these individual businesses to drive their own cultures and their own ways of working whilst maintaining the group-wide culture?
I think the biggest thing comes down to trust. You have to be able to trust the people who are leading the businesses. I have a particular leadership style. I'm very transparent and quite energetic and very, very straight talking. I like to be close to the businesses. I like to be close to the people who are in it. But fundamentally, it's about the people who are running those businesses. I mentioned earlier that it's actually quite difficult for me to let go of Found. But now I couldn't be happier that I'm watching and observing Natalie flourish with Found. And, it's taken on a slightly different style, a different approach. It's a different way of doing things, but fundamentally it still comes down to we need to drive impact. We need to have really smart people working with us. But that's Found. Found is very different to working with a business like Seed. Seed is very creative. It's very imaginative. It wants to bring ideas to life. And so the really important thing we seek to do, or I certainly seek to do, is not suppress the culture. Because both of those cultures, if I just talk about Found and Seed separately, or, Brader and Culture 3, everything is a little bit different. So let's embrace it. Let's enable their culture to flourish, and then just tie it back to what we're all trying to achieve is great impact and working with great people to deliver amazing results.
Tina, you mentioned before how there was that real moment for you when you suddenly stepped back from Found and brought in MDs of the different agencies. Tell me a bit about maybe Brader and when you originally spun that out from within the group. What was that experience like?
This was great. It was such a good decision for us to make. So Brader was born out of Found. It was the data team within Found. What was fascinating about Brader, though, or the data team as they were, is that they already kind of had their own distinct culture. As you can imagine, highly technical, highly curious, and massively obsessed with data, obsessed with AI, obsessed with problem solving. So giving them their own identity allowed that culture to really flourish. And that's why we made a decision to create Brader rather than Found Data Team. And it's been a huge success. They've got their own brand, they've got a narrative, they've taken to market, and they've become far more than an analytical support for the wider group. It's fair to say it did come with its problems as well. Because Brader started with Found, the boundaries were blurry and really blurry. It was hard to strike the right balance between treating Found as a client and simply doing everything possible to support them. So I think in the earlier days, we could have defined Brader's role within the group more clearly. Right from the start. Their delivery focus naturally leaned towards Found, and that sometimes held them back from pushing their own identity and their own story forward. And then lastly, we really had to home in on focus. They could do everything: analytics, development, machine learning, data science. That it took us a little while to just narrow in on a clear direction. One thing that was quite fascinating with Brader, and it's quite interesting when you look back at it, is we had a team of brilliant specialists. What we didn't have was client services. All of our client services people sat within Found, and we all know that client servicing is a skill set in its own right. It's very much a people-led skill set about being able to create relationships, create partnerships with people. So what we had for a short period of time with Breda was people who could deliver things, could deliver actions. And what we weren't necessarily doing right at the outset was conveying the what and the how and the why. So we had to pivot quite quickly and ensure that we brought client servicing into it. And that's slightly different client servicing because you're talking through a data-led narrative, but you still need to be able to connect it to whatever the client's fundamental goal was. So that was it was a quick learning and something that we certainly resolved within about 6 months or so of starting Breda.
So, Tina, you've been through that journey of spinning out a separate agency from within the agency. If there was 3 top tips that you would give me if I'm thinking through doing that, what would those 3 things be?
I would say be very clear of what your strengths are across the whole business before you spin it out. It's so important to make sure that you're carrying those strengths over with you. You need to have a focus, a real singular focus of what it is you're seeking to achieve if you are spinning a business out from another business. Why am I doing this? Why is it important? And does it make sense to do it? Because often you are better as a greater sum of all parts rather than a singular operating system. Thirdly, you're going to make mistakes. Just be mindful. Just accept that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have a plan. You're going to roll that plan out, and it's not always going to work. Learn from it quickly. Don't be fearful of it, and press forward.
And Tina, not only have you spun a new agency out from within the group, you've also acquired some agencies across the way. Tell me a bit about that. And in particular, what have you learned from that process?
That whatever you plan for, it probably isn't going to work out that way. Acquiring businesses and bringing them into a group, it's never simple. You're merging different sizes, styles, cultures, each used to operating in their own way, and then suddenly there's a bigger structure around them. Spinning out Breda from Found, which started life as Found's data team, that's been a real success because, we gave them their own identity, their own front door, but it made it a lot easier because the culture came naturally from being part of Found for some time. I think the biggest learning curve I had was with Disrupt. When we acquired them, I thought it was the perfect match. Everything they stood for creatively was everything I wanted to bring into the business. What I didn't factor in was the culture clash. Found was analytical, structured, performance-based. Disrupt was instinctive, fast-moving, driven by ideas. And I guess the best way I could describe it is Disrupt was the Instagram version of life and Found was the real one. Both true, both valuable, both very, very different energy. But what I found, we had this huge culture clash. And in the very, very early days when we acquired Disrupt, some of the early team, they left. They moved on because the environment they'd stepped into wasn't what they were used to and wasn't what they were expecting. And I learned pretty quickly that Found had its own identity and Disrupt really needed to retain theirs. That's when I made the decision to bring in an MD for Disrupt and an MD for Found, because I was essentially looking after both of them. And instead, I thought, let's create tomorrow and elevate it. And then we have MDs running each of the businesses, but bringing their own culture and their own mindset to it. And that was probably one of the best decisions I've made.
So I think what you're saying is if you acquire a business that's doing fundamentally the same work as you can probably integrate them and there's a bit more in common with the cultures. Whereas if you acquire a business that's doing fundamentally different things, especially data compared to creative, you kind of have to keep them quite separate so that they can keep their unique cultures.
Without a doubt. So if I look at a couple of other businesses that we have in the group, Seed and Culture 3, I would say that the experience I had with Disrupt changed how I approached both of these businesses. This time, I didn't want to absorb their culture. I guess I wanted to protect it. Seed is our creative studio. It's full of energy. It's full of imagination. Culture 3 is really helping brands tell stories and really nurture the cultural space. This is very different to data analytics, to insights, to performance. So when you've got all of these under one roof, you're just working with very different types of people. Data and analytics, it thrives on structure, it thrives on certainty. And as I learned with Disrupt, creatives live in a world of possibility. And I guess the funny thing is I like to think I have a creative streak, but I am so wired for data and logic. So it's been quite tough learning for me to guide people who think in bursts of ideas. That can be challenging because you want to give them the freedom of space to breathe, but you also need to help channel it into something focused that can move forward and can deliver. So the difference with Seed and with Culture 3 is that I've let them keep their rhythm and culture, and I focused on connection and not control. And that has made a huge difference.
Now, Tina, same question as before. If I'm listening and I'm thinking about acquiring another agency, what are your 3 top tips that you might give me?
Number 1, it's never going to go as you planned. So plan for that, be expectant of it, and determine how it might not work out, and as a result, how you're going to mitigate any risk. Secondly, be really clear that it's the right business for you. And I think I come back to Disrupt and how I just loved what they were and what they stood for. And I didn't look closely enough at how culturally aligned they were to our business. And it's not to say don't go and acquire another business that is not culturally aligned to your own. It's more about being aware of that, and as a result, planning how you're going to be able to integrate 2 businesses together in a manner that's going to see them completely thrive. And thirdly, just remember why you've acquired it. There was a reason you observed it. There was a reason you thought they'd be great for the group. Let them come in and let them live and breathe within the group.
Now, you've recently appointed a Chief AI Officer. Can you tell me a bit more about how that works and how you're using AI to bring out the best in everyone?
It's not about the hype for us. We've been using AI across Breeder, Found, or recently Seed for such a long period of time. And so it was very important for us to make sure that we were very much leading it. A fundamental decision that we made earlier this year was to appoint Dora Moldovan to Chief AI Officer at Tomorrow Group. She co-founded Breeder. But what I really observed is if I have somebody who is an MD within a business, and as a result, they're trying to inform other MDs in other businesses how they should be approaching AI, it might not work as well as if somebody who's responsible and accountable for the group application of AI. So we made a decision to bring an MD to step into Dora's shoes at Breeder, and for her to be able to step up into a group role. And that was something that was greatly supported by each of the MDs within the businesses, and something that they saw as being hugely, hugely powerful. And what Dora did was really bring a focus to what we wanted to achieve. And she came up with a mantra around be it, do it, sell it. And I'll go into a little detail about those. So be it means embedding AI into how we work. We've built an internal AI infrastructure, so anyone in the group can access information quickly and safely, whether it's client work, campaign data, or company policies. And it also just removes friction and it speeds up our decision making. Do it is more about the delivery aspect of AI, and we've built it into the ways of how we work. This started small. It actually started with a group of volunteers across the group. And that really helps us learn fast. It helps us train people effectively and see where AI could genuinely improve how the team works. And then lastly, sell it. It's about how do we take some of our AI propositions to market. Found's been leading with AI first performance strategies. It takes generative AI to market through creativity. And we're running, and have been running for some time now, a bunch of AI workshops for clients to really showcase how it all connects. As I say, I think the important thing for us was actually putting somebody at the top, someone who was going to own it, who lived and breathed it. And that worked so well with us, with Dora. She's done such a phenomenal job of leading a hungry team. The one thing we very much believe in is that AI can only work when the humans lead it. You can't just put AI in and plug it in and hope it's going to work. It's not. You need the humans to be able to drive it. And that's what's been so exciting for us to see across the group. People wanting to learn, people wanting to test, and people really growing and excelling with it. And ultimately, that's how you build a high-performing business, is when you're using AI, not to replace people. I know there's been a lot of talk about that, but to actually give people brilliant tools and brilliant platforms to think and to create and just do way better.
And it makes a real statement for you as a business to have a dedicated person on the senior leadership team as Chief AI Officer.
Absolutely. AI can't just be words. We can't just say, yes, we do AI, and that's it. you have to live and breathe it. You have to lead it. You have to spearhead it. And we really sent a message out to market by saying, look, this is what we have is someone who is fundamentally focused on driving the AI narrative, not just for Breda, because Breda's been living and breathing it for so many years, and not just for Found, because they've been working across it for a number of years, but actually for all of the businesses. And how do we ensure that everything's connected and where necessary, everything's interlocked? It was a big move for us. And it enabled us to then progress even further about understanding, well, okay, how do we connect things across tomorrow a little bit more now? And this year, we brought some more senior roles into the business. So the first was the Chief AI Officer. We then brought in a Chief Delivery Officer who made sure consistency across all of the groups in terms of how we deliver. And then lastly, we brought in a brilliant Chief Growth Officer who's really looking at how we're telling the story, how we're engaging with clients, how we are understanding what the requirements are and how we can service that collectively across the group and not just be showing up as Found, not just showing up as Culture 3, not just showing up as Disrupt, but being able to show up as Tomorrow. And that all started when we positioned Dora in the role of Chief AI Officer.
You've got the independent agencies and then you've got the group roles pulling it all together. And with the AI thing, you're investing a lot to bring the team's skills up. Tell me a bit about how you continually develop your team's skills in things like leadership, emotional intelligence, resilience, and how they show up with clients.
I guess what I would say is it's not necessarily about training sessions or big programs. It's about daily habits and how you show up for people. I try to create an environment where people can lead in their own way. That means giving them space to make decisions, backing them when things get tough, and helping them learn from it. We talk a lot in the business about awareness of yourself, of your impact, of how you make others feel. And I guess that's the fundamental foundation of emotional intelligence. I've learned that resilience comes from clarity and from confidence, and it doesn't come from pressure. If people know what's expected of them and feel supported, then they're going to push harder. And sometimes they're going to fall. Of course they are. We all do. But we're also going to recover faster. And a big part of this has been encouraging open feedback, honest conversations, and celebrating progress. And what I mean by celebrating progress, we talked at the very start about impact. We want to have an impact. That's our goal. We need to be really careful not just to celebrate outcomes, but making sure that we're celebrating, making progression along the way. So yeah, I guess you can't teach leadership in a classroom. I'm sure you can get some good guidance and steering from it. But what you can do is build it by trusting people, challenging them, and helping them grow through real work.
I think, in short, creating that environment for everyone to thrive.
Absolutely.
Tina, thank you so much for sharing everything today. It's been so lovely to talk to you. Let's take a moment to look to the future. What's next for Tomorrow Group? And indeed, what's next for you as chairman?
Oof, well, the world's only getting a little bit more complex, isn't it? Look, AI is unlocking so many new possibilities. And with that, the pressure on brands to grow, it's never been higher. I'd say at Tomorrow, our focus is simple. Stay smart, stay flexible, and let's move at speed. What we've done is build an ecosystem of really brilliant businesses who see value in each other and they work brilliantly together. And too often you see big agency groups full of great brands that barely speak to each other. And I think, what is the point of that? We've spent a lot of time defining what makes Tomorrow powerful. And it is the shared capabilities that makes our business stronger. For me, every day is different. What's next? More of it, please. More momentum, more growth, more brilliant people doing work that they're proud of. Like seeing the team succeed and enjoy what they do and seeing them continually pushing boundaries. I've got to say, it's the part that I never get tired of.
Oh, it's so lovely to hear the passion in your voice, even after 17 years. Tina, thank you so much for joining today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you ever so much.
You've been listening to Human Powered, the podcast all about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. Thanks for tuning in.